Marriage is like jewelry. Looks valuable until you realize it's just glass and cheap metal underneath. I learned that lesson the hard way, sitting in my cramped Brooklyn shop at 2 a.m, watching security footage of my wife Clarice laughing with some European wannabe intellectual at her café. My name is Nick Lasker, and I've been fixing broken things my whole life. Watches, rings, necklaces, you name it. What I couldn't fix was my marriage, but I sure as heck could break it down to its component parts and see what made it tick. The footage showed Clarice leaning across the counter, her hand brushing against this guy's arm. Ivan something or other, Serbian accent thick as molasses, always carrying around dog-eared philosophy books like they were sacred texts. The kind of guy who quotes Nietzsche at coffee shops and thinks it makes him profound. I'd been suspicious for weeks. Clarice coming home late, claiming inventory issues at the cafe, her phone face down during dinner, the way she'd light up when talking about her book club meetings that seemed to happen every other night. "Nick, you wouldn't understand," she'd say with that condescending smile. "It's intellectual discourse. We discuss literature, philosophy, the human condition." Right, the human condition of her hand on another man's thigh. My brother Paul knocked on the shop door, interrupting my spiral into rage. I let him in, his bulky frame filling the doorway. "You look terrible," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "Clarice still giving you grief?" "Worse." I turned the laptop screen toward him. "She's giving someone else comfort." Paul whistled low. "That the book club guy?" "Ivan Juric. Runs some pretentious YouTube channel about European literature. Has about 12 subscribers, mostly middle-aged women looking for meaning in their suburban lives." "What are you going to do?" I closed the laptop and leaned back. "I'm going to give them both exactly what they deserve." The next morning, I arrived at Clarice's cafe early. Maria, the young barista who'd worked there since opening, gave me a knowing look. "She's not here yet," Maria said, wiping down the espresso machine, "but her friend Jess is in the back office." Jess emerged a moment later, all fake smiles and designer workout clothes. She'd been Clarice's best friend since college, the kind of person who thrived on drama and gossip. "Nick, what brings you here so early?" "Looking for my wife. She didn't come home last night." Before we deeper into the story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Jess's expression flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. "Oh, she mentioned staying late to prep for the morning rush." "Funny thing about that." I pulled out my phone, showing her the timestamp on the security footage. This was taken at 11 p.m. Cafe closes at 9. Jess shifted uncomfortably. Maybe she lost track of time. "With Ivan." The color drained from her face. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. You've been covering for her. Question is, what did she promise you in return?" Before Jess could answer, Clarice walked through the front door, laughing at something on her phone. She stopped short when she saw me. "Nick, what are you doing here?" "Waiting for my wife to come home." I kept my voice level, controlled. "Jess was just telling me about your late-night inventory sessions." Clarice shot a warning glance at Jess, but it was too late. I'd already seen the truth written across both their faces. "We need to talk," Clarice said, grabbing my arm. "No kidding." She led me to the back office, closing the door behind us. The space smelled like coffee beans, and her perfume, the same perfume I'd bought her for our anniversary 6 months ago. "It's not what you think," she began. "Really? Because I think you're having an affair with a pretentious fraud who quotes old philosophers to impress married women?" Her face flushed. "Ivan is brilliant. He understands things you never could." "Like what? How to manipulate lonely housewives?" "I'm not lonely." But her voice cracked slightly. "I'm unfulfilled. There's a difference." "And whose fault is that?" "Yours." The word exploded out of her. "When was the last time we had a real conversation? When did you last read a book, or think about anything beyond your little shop?" I stood up slowly, feeling something cold and calculating settle in my chest. "You're right, Clarice. I've been thinking too small. Time to expand my horizons." That evening, I sat in my apartment, our apartment, with a notepad and my laptop. I'd spent the afternoon researching Ivan Juric, and what I found was even better than I'd hoped. His YouTube channel, Intellectual Discourse with Ivan, had exactly 14 subscribers. His videos were painful to watch. Him sitting in what looked like a studio apartment, rambling about books he'd clearly never read properly. But the comments section was gold. 3 different usernames, all middle-aged women, all gushing about his insights. I cross-referenced the usernames with social media. 2 were married, 1 was recently divorced. All lived within a 20-mile radius of Brooklyn. My phone buzzed. Text from Clarice. Working late again? Don't wait up. I smiled and typed back. Don't rush. I have guests too. 3 minutes later, my phone started ringing. Clarice's name flashing on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her panicked voice. Nick, what do you mean guests? Who's there? Call me back. Instead, I called Jess. Hey, it's Nick. Clarice asked me to check something with you about tomorrow's catering order. Oh, sure. What do you need to know? She mentioned you helped her cover the story about working late. Said you were there with her doing inventory. Right, exactly. We were there until almost midnight. Both nights this week? Yes, both nights. I smiled, watching the recording app on my phone capture every word. Thanks, Jess. You're a real friend. After hanging up, I sent the audio file to Clarice's inner circle, the group chat she'd accidentally added me to months ago and forgotten to remove me from. 5 women, including Jess, who met weekly for wine and gossip. The group chat exploded within minutes. Wait, Jess, you said you were home with a migraine Tuesday night. And I saw you at yoga Wednesday evening. When exactly were you doing inventory? Is Clarice having an affair? I screenshot the entire conversation and sent it to Clarice with a simple message. Looks like your story has some plot holes. My phone rang immediately. You bastard, Clarice hissed. How could you do this to me? Easily. Turns out I'm more creative than you gave me credit for. This isn't over. You're absolutely right, I said, and hung up. The next few days were deliciously tense. Clarice tried to control the damage, but her friends weren't buying the revised story. I watched from the sidelines as her carefully constructed social circle began to fracture. Ivan, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to the drama. He kept posting his pretentious videos, apparently unaware that his latest conquest was rapidly becoming a social pariah. I decided it was time to meet him properly. Thursday evening, I walked into the café just as the book club was starting. 5 people sat around a table in the corner, Clarice, Ivan, and 3 middle-aged women who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Nick, Clarice's voice was strained. What are you doing here? Thought I'd expand my intellectual horizons. You're always saying I should read more? Ivan looked up from his copy of The Stranger, a book so cliché it hurt. You must be the husband. I am Ivan. Please join us. His accent was even thicker in person, and I could see why certain women might find it charming, if they were into the whole tortured European intellectual thing. I pulled up a chair. What are we discussing tonight? Camus, Ivan said, gesturing at his book. The absurdity of existence, the meaninglessness of human struggle. Sounds cheerful. What's your take on it? Ivan launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech about existential philosophy and the human condition. I let him talk, watching Clarice beam with pride at her sophisticated lover. When he finished, I nodded thoughtfully. Interesting, though I think you're misunderstanding Camus's central thesis. Ivan's eyebrows rose. Oh? The absurdity isn't in the struggle itself, it's in the expectation of meaning. Camus wasn't saying life is meaningless. He was saying we create meaning through our choices, even when we know they're ultimately arbitrary. The table went quiet. Ivan's confident expression wavered. Furthermore, I continued, your interpretation ignores the entire second half of the book, where Meursault achieves a kind of peace through accepting his fate. It's not nihilism, it's radical acceptance. One of the middle-aged women, Margaret, I think, leaned forward. That's fascinating. I never thought of it that way. Ivan tried to recover. Well, yes, there are multiple interpretations. Sure, but yours was just wrong. I smiled. Have you actually read The Myth of Sisyphus? Because Camus is pretty explicit about the difference between absurdism and nihilism. Of course I have read it, Ivan said, but his accent was getting thicker, a sure sign of stress. Great. Then you remember his argument about suicide being the only serious philosophical problem? Ivan nodded eagerly. And how he resolves it? Silence. He doesn't, I said gently. That's the point. The question isn't whether life is worth living, it's whether we can live without needing an answer to that question. Margaret was taking notes. The other women were staring at Ivan, who looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. I think, Ivan said stiffly, we should move on to our next selection. What's next? I asked. Please tell me it's not On the Road. That would be too perfect. Clarice finally spoke up. Nick, maybe you should go. This is a private group. Actually, Margaret said, I'd like to hear more of Nick's thoughts. This is the first time anyone's challenged Ivan's interpretations. I could see the exact moment Ivan realized he was losing his audience. His jaw tightened, and he closed his book with a sharp snap. "Perhaps we should end early tonight," he said. "I have, other commitments." He gathered his things and left without another word. Clarice followed him, leaving me with 3 women who suddenly seemed very interested in having an actual book discussion. I spent the next hour talking literature with them, and by the end, they'd exchanged contact information with me and suggested starting a new book club, one that focused on actual analysis rather than pseudo-intellectual posturing. When I got home, Clarice was waiting. "You humiliated him," she said. "I corrected him. There's a difference. You did it on purpose. You came there to make him look stupid." "I didn't have to make him look stupid, Clarice. He managed that all by himself." She threw a coffee mug at the wall behind me. It shattered, leaving a dark stain on the white paint. "You're pathetic," she said. "A small petty man who can't stand seeing someone more sophisticated than him." "More sophisticated?" I laughed. "The guy's running a con, and you fell for it. He's not an intellectual. He's a pickup artist with a European accent." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I pulled out my phone and showed her Ivan's YouTube channel. 14 subscribers, Clarice. And look at the comments. Her face went pale as she read the gushing responses from his other targets. "This is what you threw our marriage away for. A guy who seduces married women by pretending to be deep." She stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked up at me with something like hatred in her eyes. "At least he makes me feel alive." "And what do I make you feel?" "Nothing," she said. "Absolutely nothing." The next morning, I woke up to find Clarice gone. Not just out early. Gone. Her clothes, her books, her coffee maker, everything that mattered to her. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm staying with Ivan. My lawyer will be in touch." I crumpled the note and threw it away. Then I made myself breakfast and started planning Phase 2. Within a week, the negative reviews started appearing on my shop's Google page. 1-star ratings with detailed complaints about rude service, overpriced repairs, and unprofessional behavior, all from accounts created in the last few days. Clarice was escalating, trying to hurt me financially. I had to admit, it was a smart move. My business depended on reputation and word-of-mouth recommendations, but 2 could play that game. I spent Saturday morning creating my own fake accounts and leaving glowing reviews for the shop, carefully spacing them out to avoid detection. Then I turned my attention to Ivan's YouTube channel. His subscriber count had actually grown to 23, probably thanks to his new living situation with Clarice. I watched his latest video, a rambling analysis of The Great Gatsby that missed every major theme and started working. First, I reported the channel for copyright violation. Ivan was using background music without proper licensing, something YouTube took seriously. Second, I reached out to his landlord. A little research revealed that Ivan's lease had a morality clause, standard in older Brooklyn buildings. I sent an anonymous tip about his seduction channel and included screenshots of his comments to married women. Third, I contacted Margaret and the other women from the book club. They were more than happy to share their experiences with Ivan's teaching methods. By Monday, Ivan's channel was under review, his landlord was asking questions, and word was spreading through the neighborhood's tight-knit literary community that he was a fraud. But Clarice wasn't done with me yet. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the shop to find a police officer waiting outside. "Nick Lasker? That's me. I need to ask you some questions about an incident involving your wife." My stomach dropped. "What kind of incident?" "She claims you assaulted her last week. Pushed her down some stairs." I stared at him. "That's impossible. I haven't seen her since she moved out." "She has photos of bruises. Says it happened at your apartment." "Officer, I can prove I wasn't there. I was here at the shop until almost midnight that night. I have security footage." We went inside, and I pulled up the surveillance system. Sure enough, there I was, working late on a complicated watch repair. The officer made notes. She also mentioned witnesses. "What witnesses?" "Her friend Jessica Morrison." "Jess." "Of course." "Officer, with respect, I think my wife is trying to frame me. She's been angry since I exposed her affair." He looked skeptical. "That's a serious accusation." "So is claiming I pushed her downstairs when I was 3 miles away." After the officer left, I called Paul. "We have a problem," I said, explaining the situation. "What do you need me to do?" "Keep an eye on Clarice and Jess. If they're staging evidence, I want proof." Paul had always been good at surveillance. Military training, he said, though he'd never talked much about his service. Wednesday evening, he called me. "You're not going to believe this," he said. I'm watching Clarice's new place. She just came outside with fresh bruises on her face. What do you mean fresh? I mean, she just applied them. Makeup, Nick. She's literally painting bruises on herself. Are you recording this? Every second. And Jess? Right there helping her. They're practicing her story for tomorrow. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Clarice wasn't just trying to leave me. She was trying to destroy me completely. Send me the video, I said, already on its way. That night, I uploaded Paul's footage to a private YouTube account and sent the link to Clarice's boss at the café, her father, and every member of her former book club. I also sent it to the police officer who'd questioned me. The response was swift and brutal. Clarice's boss fired her immediately. Couldn't have an employee filing false police reports. Her father, a stern man who'd never liked me but respected honesty, cut off her credit cards. Most importantly, the police dropped the investigation and warned Clarice about filing false reports. By Friday, she was unemployed, financially cut off, and facing potential charges herself. But I wasn't finished yet. Ivan's YouTube channel got suspended for copyright violations, and his landlord gave him 30 days to vacate. Without income from his intellectual discourse videos and facing eviction, he was getting desperate. Clarice, meanwhile, was discovering that living with a broke con artist in a studio apartment wasn't as romantic as she'd imagined. I heard about their fights from Maria, who'd stayed loyal to me despite Clarice being her former boss. She comes in here crying, Maria told me over coffee. Says Ivan isn't the man she thought he was. What gave it away? The fake philosophy or the empty wallet? Both, I think. Plus, he's been hitting on other women online. She found messages on his laptop. Of course he had. Guys like Ivan didn't change their patterns just because they landed a fish. She wants her job back, Maria continued. Asked me to put in a good word with the new manager. What did you tell her? That she burned that bridge when she filed false police reports. I was starting to feel almost sorry for Clarice. Almost. Then I remembered the bruises she'd painted on herself and the sympathy evaporated. Saturday afternoon, I was working in the shop when Ivan walked in. He looked rough, unshaven, clothes wrinkled, that confident European charm replaced by desperation. We need to talk, he said. I didn't look up from the watch I was repairing. About what? About this war you are waging against me. War? I'm just correcting misinformation. Educational purposes. He slammed his hand on the counter. You destroyed my channel. My reputation. Your channel violated copyright law. Your reputation was built on lies. I finally looked up at him. I just helped people see the truth. Clarice told me what kind of man you are. Small, jealous, vindictive. And what kind of man are you, Ivan? The kind who seduces married women by pretending to be an intellectual? The kind who runs when things get difficult? His face reddened. I am more of a man than you will ever be. Really? Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a homeless fraud who's about to lose the only woman desperate enough to believe your act. He lunged across the counter, but I was ready. I grabbed his wrist and twisted, using leverage to pin his arm against the glass case. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. You're going to walk out of here and leave town. Tonight. Or what? I pulled out my phone and showed him a video I'd prepared. A compilation of his messages to married women, his fake credentials, and his copyright violations. Or this goes viral. Every woman in Brooklyn will know exactly what you are. He stared at the screen, his face going pale. You have until midnight, I said, releasing his arm. After that, this video gets posted everywhere. Ivan stumbled toward the door, then turned back. This is not over. Yes, I said, it is. He left without another word. That evening, Paul called me. Your boyfriend just loaded a suitcase into a taxi, he said. Looks like he's taking your advice. And Clarice? Standing in the doorway crying. Real tears this time, not makeup. I felt a moment of satisfaction, followed immediately by something that might have been regret. This was what I'd wanted. Complete victory. So why didn't it feel better? You okay? Paul asked. Yeah, just tired. You want to grab a drink? Celebrate? Not tonight. I think I need some sleep. But I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the woman I'd married and the man I'd become in the process of destroying her. Tomorrow, I decided, would be the end of it. One final move to close this chapter completely. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor. Clarice stood outside my shop, looking smaller somehow. The confident woman who'd lectured me about intellectual discourse was gone, replaced by someone who looked lost and defeated. I let her in. Ivan's gone, she said without preamble. I know. You drove him away. I gave him a choice. He made it. She laughed bitterly. Some choice. Leave town or be destroyed. The same choice you gave me when you decided to have an affair. We stood there in silence for a moment, surrounded by the tools of my trade, tiny screws and springs, delicate mechanisms that could be fixed if you knew what you were doing. I lost everything, she said finally. So did I. No, you didn't. You still have your shop, your brother, your precious reputation. I lost my wife. You never had me, not really. Maybe she was right. Maybe we'd been broken from the start, and I'd just been too stubborn to admit it. What do you want, Clarice? I want to go back to how things were before. Before what? Before you cheated? Before you tried to frame me? Before you painted bruises on yourself to destroy my life? She flinched. I was desperate. You were cruel. So were you. She was right about that too. I'd been methodical and ruthless in my revenge, taking apart her life piece by piece with the same precision I used to repair watches. I can't undo what I did, she said, but maybe we can start over. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 5 years ago. She was still there, underneath all the mistakes and betrayals and lies. But I also saw the woman who'd called me pathetic, who'd chosen a con artist over her husband, who'd been willing to send me to jail to cover her tracks. No, I said. We can't. Her face crumpled. Please, Nick, I have nowhere else to go. That's not my problem anymore. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix this. She stood there for another moment, tears streaming down her face. Then she turned and walked away. I watched her go, feeling empty rather than victorious. Monday morning, I opened the shop as usual. The negative reviews had been removed, my reputation was intact, and business was actually better than before. Word had gotten around about my literary knowledge, and several customers had mentioned it. Paul stopped by around noon. How are you holding up? I'm fine. You don't look fine. I set down the watch I was working on. I won, Paul. Completely. So why do I feel like I lost? Because winning isn't always what you think it's going to be. She destroyed our marriage. She tried to destroy me. I had every right. You had every right, he agreed. But rights don't make you feel better? That afternoon, Margaret from the book club called. We're starting our new group Thursday night, she said. Are you still interested? I don't know. Maybe. Nick, what you did to that Ivan character was brilliant. We all felt so foolish for falling for his act. You weren't foolish. You were looking for something meaningful. Well, we found it. Your analysis of Camus was the most insightful discussion we'd had in months. After she hung up, I sat in the quiet shop thinking about meaning and absurdity, and the choices we make when we know they won't matter in the end. Camus was right. We create our own meaning through our actions, even when those actions lead to outcomes we didn't expect. I'd chosen revenge over reconciliation, destruction over repair. Maybe that made me the villain in this story, or maybe it just made me human. Either way, it was over. I locked up the shop and walked home through the Brooklyn streets, past the café where Clarice and I used to have coffee on Sunday mornings, past the apartment where we'd planned a future that would never happen. The last word, as it turned out, was silence.